What is up, everybody? Brian Mendler back in your life on this Monday, December 16th, 2019. And I am super pumped today to be joined by my friend, by superintendent, by author, by one of the best speakers that I personally have ever seen. And I kid you not, one of the top ones that I've ever seen. And I've seen a bunch of them. Dr. Joe Sanfelippo, man, good to see you. How are things over there in Fall Creek?
Thanks, Brian. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Well, it's good. We got 8 inches of snow last night, so that's a lot. That's a lot. It came down pretty hard. And it was like the thick snow. It's not like the snow that you want to go out. It's like, you know what? We'll just go shovel a little bit. Man, you are in there. The back is hurting, and it's just not great. But that's all right. Just kind of the way that we live, and it's the way we do things, I guess. Huh?
That's good snowman and snowball snow, though,
Yeah,
right? I mean, for sure.
absolutely. That would be great if people were out on the playground today, but we're off with kids, and I think that the thing that the kids love about it is like they do a great job outside getting along with each other when it comes to the snow it's actually better because they have something to do outside when they connect, which is really cool for us, I think.
So you guys, the snow is just built right in, right?
Yeah,
I mean, same here. I mean, I live in upstate New York, and it's the teachers are sending home notices. Hey, send the snow gear. I mean, we
right.
go outside. I mean, because if you don't, you lose basically half the year outside.
It's true, and I think the bigger thing for us, the harder part is it's not even the snow, it's the cold. Like if it's snowing, we're gonna go outside, we're gonna come to school, and if we can get it early enough, we can get we got all the equipment to do it. I mean, that's not the problem. It's the cold. The cold got us last year, where it was like it's 40 below with the wind chill for 4 days in a row. You can't deal with that. That's ridiculous. So just trying to get through some of that stuff is hard, but the snow, we'll take snow all day.
Yeah, I hear you. So how are things, man? What have you been up to? I mean, you got the big construction project going on. How's that going? Things going well with that? Last I was there, you were kind of mid that.
Yeah, you kind of came at a time where we were just kind of getting ourselves rolling with a lot of those pieces. We are in the new building. It's beautiful. The thing about the building that's awesome is we started the conversation talking about what's best for kids in terms of open spaces, places to just kind of be a kid as opposed to all these little nooks and crannies and all of those like little rooms off to the side. This gave us a chance to kind of let kids be kids and almost treat it more like a college environment where you can kind of just like you have places to be. So that got done, and a lot of just really nice sight lines and everything. And the best part for me, honestly, is when people come in to the building that haven't been here for a long time, or there's so much pride in this community. So when they come back in and they walk through the hallways and they can actually connect and talk about what used to be there, but they can still feel like they're part of it. That changes the conversation because it's really about making sure that the community can be part of what this really looks like, and that's been really great to see. They walk in and they love it, but it also reflects them. It reflects a hardworking, environment as opposed to a lot of, bells and whistles and everything that goes along with it.
What does it take? What does it take to go through a project like that as the leader, as the guy in charge?
Hmm.
It must be one heck of a process. Have you gone through this before?
Yeah, this is the second one we've done since
By the way,
I've
tilt
been
your
here.
camera a little bit. You're like a little bit off center. So can you tilt your
Oh,
the let me
how's
see.
that? Better?
Yeah, come to your there you go. A little bit to your left. You walk to your left like a step.
Like this way?
There you go. Perfect.
Oh, cool.
Perfect.
Okay.
Right there.
All right,
Perfect.
perfect. So, yeah, it looks good. That's
You
good.
keep leaning back. It's all good.
Yeah, so I think the thing that it does for me is like the thing that we really need to be, from a leadership perspective, is just making sure that everybody has some kind of voice in the process, from where the community, what they're looking at to what we want from our staff and our students and what that really looks like. And so if you can get everybody involved and invested in some capacity and listen to them, because you can say like, oh, we're going to go to the community and ask them what they want, but then if you ask for something that they didn't want, then or go to them for something that they didn't want, then you really didn't ask them. You're just kind of checking a box. And so we went to the community and asked about things like an auditorium, and we asked about things like an additional gym because we really need gym space and everything. And those ideas they didn't come back in terms of our survey data, feeling like that was something that was going to move forward or that they really supported. So what we did was when we changed the project up, we wanted to make sure that the people who would have used those two things in particular would still have access to some really great things like new band and choir room and a new fitness facility that our community can use for free of charge for everybody in the community. And that really helped the process because it really reflected what they wanted as opposed to us just kind of tacking something on at the end. So leadership leadership wise, it's really just making sure that you're listening to the people around you. And I'm not real, I'm not all that smart, man. I'm just telling you, like, I got great people that do great things, and we're just here to shout about them and kind of take their input and move forward.
Yeah, that's great. So, how long have you been there? How long have you been in Fall Creek? What was your path? What's your path to getting there, and how long have you been there?
Yeah, so this is now my 10th year in Fall Creek, ninth year as a super. I'm sorry, ninth year in Fall Creek, eighth as a superintendent. And no, that's not right. No, it's 10 years, nine as a superintendent. They all kind of get run together. When I got here, I was the fifth superintendent in 6 years. So they were just kind of changing people out every year. And I think a lot of times what ends up happening in those roles in the superintendent role is that people don't know what you do, and when they don't know what you do, they make up what you do. And when they make up what you do, it's basically based on what happened to them 25 years ago for the person that held the role and what that really looked like. So what we really need to do is kind of establish what that looked like for us and what we wanted it to look like. But prior to that, I was a principal. I was an elementary counselor. I was a second grade teacher and a fifth grade teacher before entering into this place. But this has been such a wonderful move because it's a community that really takes a lot of pride in what they do. It doesn't matter if it's on a field or on a court or in a classroom or in a hallway. They just take a ton of pride in what they do, and it's just it's been the best move of our lives to this point. We're just very happy about it.
One of my favorite things that you do on Instagram and on Twitter is you do the 1 minute walk to work. Because
Mm-hmm.
so you live a minute away. I remember you telling me when I came there that you actually intentionally bought a house basically in the middle of town,
Mm-hmm.
correct? You're
Yeah.
like, I could have kind of lived anywhere, and you live in the middle of town. And so, what was your thought process?
Yeah. So, well, the thing that we need to understand, I think, a lot of times is that whole, in the absence of knowledge, people tend to make up their own. If they don't know what you do, then they make up what you do. That doesn't end at school. It's home too. So, we just wanted to be part of the community. And my wife is ridiculously smart, and she said she started looking at houses like where we get to school right away, where our kids could get to school right away. People know where you're gonna live anyway. You might as well be in the middle where they can see kind of what how you live. And I didn't want anybody making up like how I lived as the superintendent in the district. Like he lives off on a hill somewhere and he comes in for the days. Like we're here all the time, and that's a big deal for us. We want to make sure that not only are we invested in the community, but we have a chance to kind of contribute as much as we can too. So being part of this community has been unbelievable. The other thing is really nice. Like I love walking across the street. I love that I can get in and out of school in a minute. I love that my kids can get in and out of school in a minute. I love that I can end a board meeting at 9 o'clock and I'm home at 9:05. I can leave a basketball game at 8:25 and I'm home by 8:30. Like I love that stuff. That's really big for me in terms of just like the being part of the house and being here. You don't have to add that drive time. So the 1 minute walk to work actually started because we were thinking about ways to just change the leadership, or just really think about thoughts in terms of what leadership really looked like. And I just started recording myself going to work because that's I'd have some thoughts and I'd go. And it was, I guess people liked it, so we kind of kept doing it. And there are weeks that we don't do anything because I don't always have thoughts to share, to be honest. So, I come in Saturday morning and walk to work, and I think it's just been fun to kind of get some of those views out. One of the things that's really that we've done that's been really I think most fun for me is just to kind of reflect the community in that we're really trying to shout out the community. I mean, like if you're looking now, I mean, there's the Go Crickets,
Yep.
banner behind me. You got the Go Cricket shirt on. If you watch those 1 minute walk to works in a minute and a half, there's 6 Fall Creek drops in a minute and a half where we mention something about Fall Creek, or you walk past a sign that's Fall Creek. Like we're always thinking about how to make sure that our brand is out there, because we want people to know about the great things that our crew is doing. They're doing amazing things. They should be celebrated on a national level, and they are, and that's really cool for us.
Nobody does it like you do. Nobody. I don't see anybody who promotes, who publicizes, who makes their school. Lindsay Stumpenhorst,
Mhm.
she does an amazing job too. She was on here a couple weeks ago. She's always sterling everything. But the level of, I mean, when I walk through your store, you guys have everything. Like there's
Yeah.
nothing you can't find that says Go Crickets or Fall Creek. I want to just jump back real quick because you said something really fast that I want to just expand upon. You said if people don't know what you do, they're going to make up what you do. What do you specifically mean by that? And how do you relate that to like principals or
Mhm.
teachers or anybody else? Really, it kind of makes sense in all aspects of life.
Yeah, it really does. And I think that's what ends up happening with schools. I think the biggest problem, one of the biggest problems in schools for us is that people don't know what they do. So they make up what they do based on what happened to them. You know, parents make up what you do based on what happened to them 25 years ago when they were in school. And a lot of times that was when they got jacked up that they didn't get a second chicken sandwich at lunch, or they got put against the wall at recess, or they got a grade they didn't deserve, or the teacher didn't like them, or whatever. And they continue to tell that story about what they think is happening in that space when that's not really what's happening in that space. And then what happens is if they're telling a story about what happened with a second grade teacher 25 years ago, then that becomes the narrative of your second grade teacher right now. And that's not fair to the second grade teacher right now who's crushing it, right? And doing incredible things and telling stories at the same time. If the story that's being told about your school is the one that's being told from 25 years ago, you have no chance to change the conversation. And I'll tell you, we do this to ourselves, Brian. We do this to ourselves all the time. We get to this place where we when we talk about ourselves and we say, well, I'm just a teacher, I'm just a custodian, I'm just a this, I'm just a that, I'm just. When we say that, we devalue our work, first of all. But not only do we devalue our work, but we give the person that we're talking to license to do exactly the same. Because why would they change the way that they talk about us if we're not going to change the way that we talk about us? And if you start, if you're on the other side of that where you're saying, well, no, I'm just a teacher, in hopes that the person that you're talking to says, no, 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 you're fantastic, you're amazing, what you do is incredible, you change lives, and you don't get that response, then you start to believe that that's who you are. And then that's the way that people start to act. And that's on us from a leadership capacity to make sure that people feel like they're not just and not only, that they can be in a place that they feel like they know what that they're making a difference. And when you get in, when you live in this world where people don't know what you do, and then they make up what you do, then you're always walking around wondering if people can invest in the things that are happening. So we spend a lot of time making sure that people know what we do, and it's a lot about our making sure that our kids' work is out there, but it's also for our teachers to make sure that everybody knows that our people are crushing it. And they deserve to be celebrated. And they deserve to be out there talking to groups about what they're doing because they're just killing it.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. How do you do that though? Like what, how specifically? So what's the specific measure though? Because it's easy to sort of, to sort of say that, but if I'm a teacher, how do I show that what I do? Like, are you saying, do I go on social media? Do I call parents? What do I do specifically so I can show you so you don't get to create the narrative for me?
The first thing starts with relationships, and the stuff that you're talking about when it comes to using social media and calling people, that's truly important. And I think that's where we've gotten a lot of our leverage, but everybody's got a story. And unless you're willing to tell that story in some capacity, you lay to somebody else's narrative of who you are. So not only we want people to tell their story, but at the same time, we also want to build some momentum for that. So here's one of the things that we do. We live by this whole mentality of recognize, acknowledge, extend. Okay, so one of the things that's really important to us, not only from an administrator lens, but from a teacher lens, is we recognize, acknowledge, and extend the conversation or the work that's happening within the context of our space. You walk down hallways with a different mentality so you can recognize the great things that your colleagues are doing. Once you recognize the great things that your colleagues are doing, the colleague is doing, don't just leave it there. Acknowledge it to that colleague that they're doing great things, right? But you can't leave it there. You can't leave it with the acknowledgement. You acknowledge to them that they're doing great things. Then you walk somewhere else and you extend the conversation to somebody who wasn't there so they know incredible things are happening over here. Because what inevitably happens if you build a culture like that, what ends up happening is the person that you extended the conversation to about the incredible things happening wherever they are, that person will go to the person that's doing great things and tell them that they're doing great things because somebody did it for them. So our job is to support each other in the great things that we're doing and not do them in isolation behind closed doors. Because if you're doing that, then you get to these situations where people are afraid to talk about the great things to their colleagues because they're afraid of what their colleagues are going to say about them. Either their colleague is going to say, well, that's really not as great as you think it might be. Or the other side is true too, where they say to their colleague, I got this really great idea. And their colleague's like, don't do that. Because if you do that, then I'm going to have to do that. And I don't know if I'm ready to do that. So don't do that. right? So then they stop talking about these great things. So that builds momentum, because when other people are talking about the work that you're doing, then they provide value to you. And when your audience changes, your effort changes, because people outside know what you're doing. So specifically, we're talking about recognize, acknowledge, extend. The other thing is building momentum for story. So instead of doing a podcast with a student in your classroom, do the and sending it out on social media, do the podcast, but then call the parents of the kids on that podcast and say, hey, I got to tell you, I just had a great conversation with your son or daughter. It was fantastic. This is some of the stuff that they're doing. I thought you'd want to hear about it, because I'm going to put it out on my social media feed here in a little bit, and I figured that you'd want to hear that first. Well, mom and dad are sitting there with their phone just going refresh, 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 refresh,
Yep.
because they want to be the first people to share it out, because they're proud of their kids. And
Mm.
what ended up happening, I think, with us from educator standpoint, is that we stopped being proud of the work, and we started defending the work, right? And there's a distinct difference between being proud of the work and defending the work, because when you're proud of the work, you can't wait to talk about the work. You walk down hall, think about the things you're proud of. I'm proud of my kids. I'll tell anybody a story about my kids all day, right? I'm proud of the work that we're doing here. I'll talk to anybody about it. But if you're proud of it, you seek out conversations, because you know something positive is going to come your way. When you're defending the work, you walk into a conversation knowing that you're going to have to defend it again, defend it again, defend it again, defend it again. And then because something negative is going to come at you. And if you're always defending the work to the same person or the same group of people, at some point you start avoiding conversations with them, because you always walk away feeling worse than when you walked in. So this is where we got to build momentum through recognizing the work, acknowledging the work, and extending the work. So you're not the only person trying to create momentum when you can't do it alone.
And I feel like that can be done in all aspects of life. I'm thinking about that with my own kids. Recognize, acknowledge, extend, right? Really in all different aspects of life. And what you just said about that phone calls with the parent, you're actually doing all three at the same time with the parent, right? You're recognizing, you're acknowledging their kid, and you're extending it, saying, hey, be excited because it's going to come out on another platform. Wow, this is amazing. And the connection that generates between that parent and that teacher, or that kid and that teacher in that moment, takes it to another level. And once you take it to another level, then you can teach them anything you want, right?
Yep.
But it's always about the connection first in every situation. And you're masterful at that. I mean, you're very good. I think some people in general are better than others at that. Have you had staff ever that were reluctant relationship builders that you found kind of struggle, not even necessarily reluctant, but just that wasn't their thing? Like and again, I don't criticize this, by the way. I think in education, there's a place for all different kinds of people, right? So if you're a person who just wants to teach math, you can find a place in this country where you can just go teach math, and you don't have to connect as much as you might at a different kind of a job. But have you ever had someone that you've had to really coach into that? And what do you recommend? How do you do it?
Yeah, I think the thing that we need to understand about all of our groups and like is nobody unless we start seeing people's value, then they're not going to end up talking to anybody about the work that they're doing, and then not building those relationships. So for us, one of the things that was truly important in terms of moving people forward is just recognizing that everybody's A to B is different, and nobody moves to B if you don't value where their A is, right? So they're not going to be willing to move at all if you don't value where they're starting, even if where they're starting isn't where you want them to be. So we really take a lot of time in terms of just knowing the people and understanding that if we value where they currently are, then they're willing to move a little bit. And because forward is forward, no matter what, forward is forward. If you're better tomorrow than you were today, even a step better tomorrow than you were today, then you're better. And then so we talked about when we talk about A to B, everybody's A to B is different. Creating the value for A will get them to B. It's how we do our whole professional growth model around here. And that is that, we could sit people in a room and tell them, well, we need to get better at this, 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 and this. But our sample size are so small in Fall Creek, where our data set is so small. What we said to everybody was, it's our job to just help you to become a better teacher. Whatever that looks like for you, let's get to that place. So we ended up, this growth model has taken people, and we just tell we call it the passion projects for adults. So our people get a chance to choose what they want to learn throughout the course of the year. And when they learn what they're doing throughout the course of the year, they get days that are embedded into our year where the only agenda item is lunch. You work on your goal for the day. That's your job, right? I don't walk in to classrooms and say, well, tell me more about this, or what have you done today, kind of thing. They're adults. Trust them. So we trust that they're going to be doing the work. Now, are there people in Fall Creek, Wisconsin on goal days that probably don't work on their goals? Maybe. I don't know. but we make decisions based on our best people, and that's what we're going to do. And our best people want this stuff. And what ended up happening with that passion project
Wait,
piece.
can you just slow down for a second because I
Yeah.
wanted you to explain exactly what you mean. So what do you mean? So what do you mean embedded? What do you mean they only have to do lunch? Like
Okay.
what's be more specific with that so people understand.
Okay, so the growth model, the professional growth model is how we do professional development here. And what our group does is at the beginning of the year, they pick what they would refer to as a passion project, either them individually or as a group. And when they do that, they just say, okay, so here's how I'm going to get better. They have one student data component that goes along with it. But then there are 4 days built in throughout the course of the year that we call professional growth model days or goal days or whatever. I think we call them growth goal days. And during those days, the only agenda item that is for the day is lunch. Like that's all you got to do is you got to go to lunch and you got to eat, you got to hang out with your colleagues. Like that's what you got to do. But the other time is built for you to really invest in your own learning. Okay, so you can do your research, you can connect with your colleagues, whatever. The thing that we've told them is the only way to do growth goal days wrong is grade papers, organize your classroom, or lesson plan. That's the only way that you can do it wrong because that's not making you any better. Give them the time to actually move forward and connect with their colleagues. It changes the conversation. And then what ended up happening with us, Brian, when we do this, what I thought was really cool about it was that it changed the way that people work with kids. Because when we talk about what it means to own learning, it wasn't that they didn't want kids to own learning. They just wanted to know what it felt like. And when they knew what it felt like, now they want to do it. And now they want to do it over and over again. And it changed the conversation in terms of what we're doing. The last thing that we do with the growth model is at the end of the year, instead of you as a second grade teacher sending a reflection to me on what you learned throughout the course of the year, which essentially you could say, well, I learned because my kids grew 14% on this standardized assessment. I mean, that you could fake anything at that point to me, right? You can do anything in a reflection and it's going to sound however you want. Instead, we have a teacher street fair. So during the teacher street fair, we have all of our staff in the gym all day. We set it up like a vendor hall. And you're at your table, and what ends up happening is you put a display of learning out, whatever it is. Doesn't matter what it could be big, could be small, could be whatever. Anything. We've had people put huge displays together. We've had people come in with a binder. This is what my learning was. That's all. I mean, it doesn't matter as long as you can have the conversation about your learning. And then we rotate each other through so you get a chance to see your colleagues learning and what they've learned throughout the course of the year. Now you've connected value to what you've done because your colleagues get a chance to really think about what that looks like. And what ended up happening with that is we have to understand that when you do something like that, your audience changes. And when your audience changes, your effort changes. Well, the first year, we live streamed it. And when we live streamed it and 21,000 people watched the live stream of our teachers teaching other teachers, that changed the conversation because everybody knew that their audience was different. And then everybody wanted to be part of it.
So you live streamed the teacher fair one
Yeah.
year?
Yep.
So I just want to understand this. So if I'm a teacher, I basically have it's sort of like you're graduating from your master's program and you're going to lay out like your final project and you get to put out what you've learned throughout that year. And then you're teaching other people are walking by, so to speak, and stopping by your booth, right? Teach me something about relationships, teach me something about how to teach reading facts to second graders. And they're going to, so now you've got all this knowledge that you've done your work on, and now you get to teach that to the other teachers. That's awesome. That's
Correct.
really cool.
Yep. And it's just a conversation. Like it's been great. So we'll have people doing things like, having kids do their own breakout EDU, build their own breakout EDU box. We've had documentaries for the village. We had last year we had our middle school created a business with middle school kids. They actually sold night crawlers, and so they had like a social team, they had a marketing team, they had all these kids that did all this stuff, aquaponics. I mean, all of these things that people really want to get into, and then your staff gets a chance to really connect and talk about it. And now here's the really cool part for me, right? This is where it gets to the next level, because now that they've been doing this stuff, now when we go to conferences and I can take people to conferences and they can present at a national conference about the work that they're doing with the growth model, changes the conversation. Because when they show up to a national conference and in that national conference they walk into a room and it's packed and there's nowhere to sit and our people get to talk about what they're doing to a packed house, what happens right after that session? They get on their phone, they start texting all their friends saying, you're not going to believe what just happened to us. And that changes the conversation because now your work has value. And they built this whole thing. Man, they built all of it. This was all them. I just told them we need to get better, and I need you to help me help people get better. And they put it together. This is all them.
And I think when you do this as a teacher, it naturally will make you think more this way. Or I'm saying when you do this with from administrator to teacher, I think it will now as a teacher make me think more this way about working this way with kids, right?
Hmm.
So it's now the kids get to say to me, here's what I want to learn. Here's what I'm interested in. Here's what I care about. And then almost I wonder if certain teachers do that where you could even give kids certain days that they could take to do the same thing that you give teachers the same thing to do. Does that make sense what I just said?
Well, yeah, we do it. It happens all over the place here. Happens all over the place. In fact, it turned into something we do at the high school called the senior capstone. So in the senior capstone, you get a time built into your schedule that you can research whatever you want. What's going to help you once you graduate from Fall Creek High School? What can we do to help that process as you move forward, right? So they get a chance to research what they want. If it's from woodworking to tech to we do videography, nursing, all kinds of stuff. They're all kinds of things. Then at the end of the year, instead of the teacher street fair, they get the seniors come in to do their capstone project, and they don't present to teachers. They present to people in the industry. So we bring people from outside in to the industry from their industry that they're looking to get into, and then they give them feedback on their project. That's
Can you
when it
give me an
gets real.
example of one of those? That sounds amazing. Well, do you have one off the top of your head that stands out?
So if we
That's
have
cool.
somebody that's really into talking about like what they're doing in terms of healthcare, so we'd have somebody come in and talk about like their ideas in terms of what they want to do when they go into healthcare, and then we have people from the healthcare industry like nurses or doctors come in. We had a couple of people that wanted to start and like do some entrepreneurial things when it comes to building. They built a couple benches, like some picnic benches, and some that the benches that not just picnic benches, but they would fold up in different ways and just were just really a little bit more innovative. And then we brought people in from outside that were in that trade, in construction or something like that. And then they gave them feedback not only on the project in and of itself, but also on how to market that project once they got out of there. So those are two off the top of my head. But we have people like building video stuff. They were doing some video stuff like editing, and they did that for one of our large organizations in the area, and that was pretty cool too.
That's awesome. Do the teachers go about help finding the people, or is that kind of a team effort? People go in. I used to have when I taught self-contained special ed, the assistant men's basketball coach of our local community college used to come into my class
Mm-hmm.
and talk to my kids every year, and he would talk about just things like he would tell them, the first. So he'd say we keep 15 guys on our team. The first 10 we keep because they're good at basketball. The
Mm-hmm.
last 5 we keep because they're get good grades, right? Because they basically give each coach a score. They rate their whole team and they give them a score, and that's the grade that the coach gets for
Okay.
that season, so to speak, right? So he would say to my kids, he'd say, you don't have to be the best basketball player, but there's a chance when you come to our community college, you try out for the team. I'm going to call Mr. Mendler and I'm going to say, Mr. Mendler, does he come to class on time?
Mm-hmm.
Because if he doesn't come to class on time, why would he come to practice on time? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Does he cry when things are hard? Does he push through things when things are hard? Right? And so that alone, bringing someone in from the outside in general, was really powerful for my kids. Just getting that other voice that had no skin in the game, so to speak. Right? At the
Right.
end of the day, they don't care if the kid does their work or not.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like hearing something from your uncle versus your dad. Sort of like your dad can tell you something your whole life, and then your uncle tells it to you. You're like, oh yeah.
Yeah, I
And
did do
your
that.
dad's like, I've been telling you that forever. And you're like, right, I didn't hear it.
That
That's
happens all the time. Yeah, that's what we want. We want them. We're talking about preparing them for whatever real life is once you get out. Well, you better have somebody out here that's doing it that can help them with it, because you can be telling them the same thing, but once it comes from their mouths in terms of what they're doing, in the field, it changes the conversation. And we just want to give our kids that opportunity. And I think that one of the things that's been really great for us from a social perspective is now that we've connected ourselves to a number of people and places across the country. Now we can get suggestions from them and that kind of thing. We have a high school group that puts it together, that goes out and seeks out these opportunities, and they're just fantastic people.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So 3 kids you have all
Mm-hmm.
go through Fall Creek. What's it like running the school that your kids go to? I mean, I know your kids are good kids for the most
Mm-hmm.
part, right? And
Yeah.
they do well, but is it you like it? Do you enjoy getting to see them every day and watching what
Oh,
they do up close?
Yeah, there's the positive and the negative about it. The positive piece is that if I want to go see Allie in a seventh grade classroom, I'm just going to walk down the hallway. If I want to see Kale in a sophomore classroom, I just go walk and see Kale. Aiden graduated, so now he's in college. But when he was here, the same thing. It's just different. And I think, well, I'll tell you, last year when he graduated, the thing that punched me in the face the most was signing his diploma. I mean, that one got me. I
Mm,
didn't think that was going to hit me as hard as it did, but it did. But it was just that stuff is really cool, and I love it. I love it. Let's be very clear. I love it. This job is hard. I don't know if I'd want to do this job in a lot of places, to be really honest. This is a really great place to do it because you have our board is like incredibly supportive. They're unbelievable. They trust the work that we're doing. We have incredible teachers, and the fact that I can walk down the hallway and see my kids is a really big deal. Now there are negative pieces to that too. I think that I kind of feel worse for my wife than anybody else, to be really honest, because if anybody's got a suggestion about why we should do or what we should do at school, somehow it always gets to her through social or whatever. But so she's got to take on that stuff. At the same time, she handles it really, really well. She's amazing, and I think just being part of the conversation has been helpful. But there's some negative pieces to it. I think our kids get treated a little bit differently, positively and negatively. Let's be really honest about that. And I think sometimes it's a little harder for them to make friends because of what dad does, but just in terms of what happens outside, of school. But at the same time, I wouldn't trade it at all. I actually, when I got my first principal job, we bought a house in a different part of town than where I was going to be the principal because I just didn't want to have the principal's kids in school and have them treated differently. What I realized, even though I wasn't at the same school, is they were a principal's kid and they got treated differently anyway, so it didn't matter. So for us, it's nice to be able to be here. The kids like it too. I think the kids like, for the most part, they like the fact that they're across the street from school. They like the fact that if they need something, it's not even about, well, dad can help with this or that. It's like dad can go home and get my backpack if I forget it. So that's really about it.
right. So what was your growing up, man? Where did you
Mhm.
grow up, and what is your story to get to where you are? I know you kind of glossed through it quick, but what
Yeah.
about as a child? Where'd you grow up? You got brothers
Well,
and sisters?
yeah, I have one sister. She's actually in New York right now. She lives on Long Island. She works at Stony Brook. So she's an assistant athletic director at Stony Brook. My mom is actually from upstate. She's from Oswego.
Oh,
So we've been heading that. We used to go out to New York once a summer every year. So anyway, so I grew up on the east side of Wisconsin, and just relatively average childhood, I guess, with a couple of things. I think the thing that I realized about school was that school was hard for me because I needed this. I needed a stage. I needed a platform. I needed a place to tell my story, and it wasn't really always built for that. And I didn't get into a ton of trouble, but at the same time, I found ways to kind of get my voice heard, probably in times that wasn't appropriate to do so. And so I think that was for me. I was just trying to find my place. I had a coach in high school that when we would do like summer basketball camp, he used to tell me every year, he'd say, you really need to work with kids. You do a great job with these kids, and these kids, really like hanging out with you. Maybe that's something that you want to get into. And I did, and I loved it, and I loved every part of it. I did, and I loved coaching. But it's just everything kind of changes a little bit in terms of where you try to help find influence and that kind of thing. And for me, I was just trying to find different platforms to tell stories, and the stories went from the stories, tell my own stories to tell other people's stories. And now my greatest joy at this point is telling stories about the incredible things that our people are doing here. And to see, one of the things I told them last year was really interesting to me. That I said, one of our staff members asked, so what's your vision for us as we move forward? What's your vision, to think about? And I said, well, let's be clear about one thing. It's never my vision. It's never been my vision. It's always yours. I'm just here to be loud about it. But I said, I can tell you what my hope is. My hope is that you feel the way that I feel when I talk about you. That's my only hope for you.
mm,
Because if you feel the way that I feel when I talk about you, then you feel really good about the work that you're doing. And that started when I was a kid, in terms of having a couple of people that were willing, to take me aside and say, what, you're really good at this. Maybe can we give you another opportunity to do something like this? And most of it was in, just coaching, but at the same time, a lot of it came in just connecting with kids and being there for kids. And I guess I've always just been trying to figure out ways that we can get voices out.
yeah, it's really, I mean, so in terms of watching presenters, you're at the top of my list, and you're by far at the top of my list when it comes to integrating technology with your
Thanks.
presentation. It was your use of that was flawless. I actually am trying to get better at that. I struggle with that because I feel like I'm so focused on what I'm saying that I there's not a lot of visuals, and watching you taught me a lot because I I'm a visual person, and so
Hmm.
I was learning by watching. Like you had videos of your daughter, and you know you had just there was one thing after another. It was a lot. There was a
Yeah.
lot. You know, it was quick and fast, and like I had to keep up. But that's me. Like I like that. I sometimes I say instead of giving the ADHD kid medicine to slow them down, why don't we speed everyone else
Yeah.
up? Right, catch everyone else up to that person, and move the
Hmm.
conversation along quicker that way. But that's really what you do, right? I mean, what you do when you're at those workshops and in front of those people is you just share what's going on in your school, really, more than
Hmm.
anything, correct?
Yeah, we just talk about how we can do things a little bit differently in terms of like how we talk about it. And we spend a lot of time talking about recognize, acknowledge, extend, but we're also talking about, nobody changes the way that they talk about us until we change the way that we talk about us. And the minute that you start talking about the fact that the thought that you're just a whatever, you've automatically pulled back on the value that you bring to whatever the day is, at that time. So the thing for me is in that hour and a half or whatever, we're just trying to make people think, feel, and laugh a little bit. And that's really what we want because
Yes.
we don't get that enough. And I think, if we can think, feel, and laugh, then we figure out ways to kind of work through it together. The other thing is, how are we making sure that we are doing it together? Right? We so many things happening in isolation. We really want to be providing an opportunity for people to connect and just say, hey, you know what, I care about you. Like you're good, you're great at what you do. This is why I think you're great at what you do, and let's just talk about moving people forward that way. And I've loved watching our people do that too. Like that's just been fun to see on a level that I never would have thought possible. But I they do it, and they've been doing it. When I interviewed for my superintendent job here, I was one of the questions was I asked them, I said, what is your expectation of me? Like, how am I going to know that I'm doing a good job in this work? And one of the board members said, there's a lot of really great things happening in Fall Creek, Wisconsin, but nobody knows about them. And I
Mm.
said, well, I'll tell you, I might not be the best superintendent you'll hire, but I am the loudest person on earth. You want people to know about the work that you're doing? We got that. That's easy. Like I can do that tomorrow. And of all the stuff that we do, I think that part's a little bit, I think that's unequivocal. Like I think people know where Fall Creek, Wisconsin is, and that makes me feel amazing. And the board that supports it, I mean, the board, that we talk to boards, school boards deal with the three B's of education, right? Beans, buses, balls, beans, food, buses, transportation, balls, athletics. That's what they deal with, right? So they don't get a chance to talk about the great things. I think part of that question was they wanted great things to hear about. So we talked. Our board lives under the auspice of three rules, and those are the answer is always we always keep our dirty laundry in house, and we never give up the opportunity to say something great about our school. And if we live under those three, and you call any board member, they live those three too. And that's part of what we want to do moving forward is just to make people feel like we're all in that together in terms of getting the great messages out.
So no matter what you're really saying is no matter how good you are and how great things are, there's still dirty laundry, correct? I mean
Always,
there
always,
has to be, right?
yeah,
It's just like a
always.
sports team. You just you keep it in house. You
We
don't let that
try.
get out to the media.
Yeah, we
Is that
try,
is that
and sometimes things get out. But if you've built enough social capital, if you've built social capital with the community, and when it hits the fan, you at least have a chance to pull back and say, "All right, so we've built all this social capital. This is wrong. We screwed this up. We've done that. Like we'll just go up and I'll say, you know what, screwed it. I'm sorry. I screwed it up. I'm so sorry. We messed it up. We're gonna fix it. We're gonna move forward. My bad."
I love that. I love that as a piece of advice in general, apologizing to people and sometimes even apologizing when you don't feel like you did anything wrong.
Hmm.
That's definitely a strategy that I teach teachers to use with kids who are really upset when you want to diffuse a really upset kid. Just keep saying I'm sorry. And when the
Hmm.
kid's like, "What are you sorry for?" Just say I'm sorry for the fact that anyone in our school would ever get as upset as you got. I
Hmm.
promise when I wake up in the morning, when my colleagues wake up in the morning, none of us are ever intending for anybody to get up this upset. And the truth is, whatever happened in this school in this moment, it's not worth it. It's not worth
Hmm.
getting as upset as you got. So, on behalf of all of us here, I apologize. By the way, is there anything you think you could do differently next time? But when you own it first
Right.
yourself and then you ask that question, there's usually a better chance that the kid's going to give you something back. And I'm guessing it's the same when you go from like superintendent to teacher, or that level of chain of command.
Without question. It's the same mentality. And we want to just, own as much as we can and help moving forward. We talk a lot about the idea that we provide time, resource, and opportunity for people to get better. Can we give you the time? Can we give you the resources and opportunity? But I can't make you get better, right? Like that's on you to own it. But if we give you the environment to do that, then with your colleagues and moving forward, then you're going to be better.
And that thing you said earlier about them getting to pick their own PD and their own learning.
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing you also guide them, right? I mean, it's probably nice for as a teacher to be able to go to my administrator sometimes and say, what do you think I need to work on? Here's some things that I think I need to work on. What do you think I need to work on? And kind of put that together. So it's not, I think it's important for teachers to understand that it's not like you're saying go do it alone. I mean, they can do it alone if they want, but there's also guides along the way, probably, correct?
Yeah, so we do a couple of things that kind of help people with that process. The first thing is, they turn in a goal. We started it when we first started it. They didn't turn in a goal to me. They turned a goal into the committee of six that developed the process. And if the committee of six felt like these things met the criteria that they had established, then they moved it forward. If they didn't think that it met the criteria, they brought that goal back to the full group of six, right? And then, I'm sorry, we gave it to them individually. And if the individual felt like the goal was met, then it moved on. If they didn't think it did, then it came back to the group of six for review and say, yep, this didn't meet it or it met it. Let's just go have a conversation with them about what that looked like. Didn't have anything to do with me until we got to like halfway through the year. And so we do that, but then we also create, each person creates their own flip grid of what they're really excited about with their goal. And then everybody watches those. And then there's a connection day where they get, to talk about what that looks like. And then midway through the year, we do it again. So like we just don't want people to feel alone in the process. But at the same time, I don't want to walk into somebody and say, you know what, I think you need to be better at this. When I've been in their classroom for 42 minutes, for an observation, all of a sudden here comes Joe talking about how they need to get better in this area. That's not my job. My job is to create the environment where people can get better and own the process moving forward. And if we do that, I don't have to sit in there and say, you know what, after 42 minutes, I know that you're not blah, 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 this, or you're really good at this or whatever. It's 42 minutes. And then that ends up being like the conversation that ends up, the logistics end up taking over the conversation. Well, I did that before you showed up. I did that after you left, and then all of a sudden it turns confrontational. We just have a conversation about what are the things that we can do to move forward. We do this activity called My Three, where we tell people to put what three things would have to happen throughout the course of the day to make your day successful. And we say, put that by your computer. So, we often will go and look at what those three things are, and we'll try to leave some feedback on one of those three things before we take off, just to let them know that we're looking at the things that they value. Because why? I mean, that's what we want to do. We want to look at what they're valuing, not what we're valuing. It's what they value.
So just to back up for that for a second. So it's three things that they write down on like a sheet of paper or a little sticky note, and then they place it by their computer. Three things that they value, that they need, or they want to work on. I missed that.
Yeah. So the direction is write down three things that would have to happen throughout the course of the day to make your day successful. So if you do that, then and the reason we want them to put that by their computer is that we want them to, like, you get halfway through the day and you sit down on your computer and you check your email and you're like, my gosh, this day is awful. And then you look at those three things and you're like, oh, you know what? I did two of those already. Or you look at it and you're like, oh, maybe I need to do one more. That's going to make me feel better so that you can kind of move forward. So we want to do that and just kind of provide that environment for people. So, and it's been helpful, and we do it, we try to get it done at the beginning of the year. Some years people just know that it's happening and they do it on their own. And, we just want to make sure that we're providing feedback. It's a lot easier for us to provide quality feedback if we know what people value.
Yep. And I love that as a teacher, again, because if I write those three things down, and like you just said, then I'm kind of having a rough day, or maybe I'm having a kid who's driving me a little crazy, pushing my buttons. But then I look at my list and I'm like, actually, one of my things on my list is that I just have to listen to someone for 2 minutes, right? And like, I mean, that would be one for me because I struggle listening. I'm working on my listening skills. Doing this show has been really great for me in terms of learning how to listen, because I have to listen to to you guys talk so I can follow up with questions. But as a teacher, it was definitely a struggle of mine. But if you put that down, then actually no matter what kind of day you're having, you can turn it around really fast. I mean, you can in 2 seconds take your day that you thought was crummy and make it really good really quick, and have other people in the mix. One of the things that I love that you do, that I don't know if you still do it, but I definitely got this from you, was where you give somebody a day off. Talk about that for a second. I
Yeah,
love that.
so we got that idea from Deerfield, Illinois. It's called they call it the holiday presents, PRE, CE instead of TS. So holiday presents, which essentially means they give a personal day away, and then the administrator takes over for them, for that person for the day. So we do that here too. And right before the holiday break, so in a couple weeks, we put everybody's name into a hat, and then we pull out 4 names, and then five names, and then we'll take our five administrators will take over for somebody, and they get a chance to just have a personal day and do whatever they want with. And that's been really impactful because I think experience breeds credibility, right or wrong, it breeds credibility. And so if people think that they know, if you know what they're doing or what they're going through, then I think it definitely helps the process. So anywhere from I taught second grade and fourth grade and English language arts, buildings and maintenance. Last year I was a custodian. I was
Yeah,
a
I remember that.
kindergarten aide, that kind of thing. Here's a really interesting thing about the kindergarten aide position that I did last year. And so the program is fantastic. I'll tell you, if you're an administrator, do that. Do that. I mean, because that gives you an incredible amount of credibility. At the same time, it gives somebody a day off, which
Yeah.
they loved anyway. So last year I was taking over for a kindergarten aide. Okay, so and here's just the really interesting thing when it comes to roles, right? Because when I was taking over for a kindergarten aide for the day, I was in the kindergarten room, and I was in this room with this amazing teacher. She was unbelievable. Her name is Erin Salter, and she is like a Jedi, man. Like, she had these kids working and doing things that I never would even thought possible. And so I'm sitting there as the aide, and I don't even know if I was very helpful because I kept just marveling at this woman and what she was doing. I'm thinking, you're so good. And so, in between each break, I'm walking up to her and going, Erin, you're fantastic at what you do. You're incredible. This is unbelievable. Did you see what those kids? She's like, yeah, I see that. Yeah, but so, and then at lunch I did the same thing. You're amazing. Look at what you're doing. You're amazing. And then after lunch they came in, they sat down, they did their whole rest time, and then they got to work on their centers. They didn't even have to be asked. And all of a sudden I'm like, Erin, did you see this? It's unbelievable. She's like, yes, Joe, I see this. This is what's happening, right? And then at the end of the day, I sat down with her, and all the kids are gone. I'm sitting down in her class, and I'm like, Erin, I just have to tell you, that was an incredible day. Thank you for letting me be part of it. And you're amazing at what you do, and I am just thankful that I got a chance to spend the day. And she was like, oh, thank you so much, and whatever. And I felt so good. So I felt good about two things. The first thing I felt good about was I felt good about myself. Let's be really honest. I went through the whole day in kindergarten, and I didn't even throw up once. So I felt good about that. But the other thing that I felt really good about was that I was telling this woman all day, you're really good at your job. I was really kind of building her up the whole time. And I felt awesome walking out of that room until later that evening when I saw Facebook, and I saw her Facebook post, right? And her Facebook post was, it was great to have Dr. Sanfelippo in school all day, but it felt like a full day observation.
Mm.
And that killed me. It killed me because all I did all day was try to build her up, but because of the role, it didn't matter, right? It still felt a certain way. So what happens the next 3 days? I'm in there all the time, just being in there, just because that's on me. That's not on her at all. That is 100% on me for not being in the space and making it feel more casual, more comfortable than it was for an observation. 100% on me, and I had to fix that. That's on me to fix.
But so you're saying though, you have to fix that, and so what you should have done instead is gone in there ahead of time before A, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and then B, when you're in there, just be in there, not
Mm-hmm.
build her up. Is that what you're saying?
No,
What would you do differently?
I'd be in the classroom more because
Before this.
before, absolutely, because when they see it as a one-time thing, then all of a sudden that's the conversation moving forward. It's not about being in there. I could have built her up all day. If the kids were more comfortable because I was in there all the time, then it's a different conversation. So, you know
Makes sense.
she's so good, man. She's so wonderful. And it was just really fun to watch her work. And that happens with a lot of our teachers here. I go into classrooms and I'm thinking, my goodness, how you're amazing, right? But if I'm not in there before, then it changes the conversation. So we just got to do everything we can to be in those spaces. And, there are times throughout the course of the year, I'll be really honest, there'll be times throughout the course of the year if I'm out, doing something else outside of school where I don't get those connections. And that's why it's really important when you're here, to be invested, to be in classrooms, to be in hallways, so people know that you're invested in the process as
Yeah.
much as you can.
I think, it's interesting, the difference as I travel the country between what you're able to do in a small district versus a
Mhm.
huge district, or like some of these ones where I'll go to in like, a place like North Carolina where everything's county driven. And so you
Mhm.
get one superintendent who's over like, 100 schools, literally, or like 90 schools. And I think it's really easy at all levels for them to forget where you need to be and what
Mhm.
places matter. And like, same for me. Like when you're out of the classroom for a little while, like there's no better. I worked in a school. I talked about this a couple weeks ago in Georgia, or in outside of Atlanta a couple weeks ago, where they had this kid who was spitting on people, and he was obviously a lot going on with him, but just seeing that and remembering what some people are dealing with on a daily basis gives you a whole other level of respect and compassion, really, for those people. By the way, I got to imagine that. So you're going to be doing this coming up. You're going to be surprising somebody with a day off. Is that going to be happening
Yeah.
soon? So are you gonna
Uh,
do you gotta do the whole thing. You gotta do like Publishers Clearinghouse, like do like a sneak, in the hallway, be like, we're about to walk in right now. And like
right, right.
they'll probably be out of there. They must be so excited when they get that
Yeah.
day off. Are people happy for those people? Like their colleagues happy? Or are some of them
Yeah.
annoyed, like I can't believe they didn't pick me?
No, well, so here's the thing that we do. Yeah, we do the whole Publishers Clearinghouse thing. We get people excited. We actually, it's not even pull out of a hat. What we do is we put everybody's number. We give everybody a number, a random number between 1 and 120, and then I'll go into a second grade classroom, and I'll say, okay, so I need a number between 1 and 30. Somebody give me a number between 1 and 30, and they'll give me a number, and we're recording the whole thing, and we'll say, all right, number 27 is Dave Ross in sixth grade. Let's go talk to him. And so administrators will go up and do that. This year, I think what I'd like to do is if I ask the second grade team or second grade kids to do it, what if I just took the whole second grade class, said, all right, stop what you're doing right now. We're out. We're going to tell them right now. And just walk in and kind of create that. Well, all we're trying to do, Brian, is create moments for people. That's
Yeah.
all we're trying to do because the moment gets talked about. We talk about this a lot. The idea that stories win every single time. Data doesn't drive a movement, the story always drives the movement. And if you can put people in a position to tell the right story, whether or not that's these professional days that we do, or when we offer jobs to people instead of me calling and saying, hey, I'd love to have you come and teach second grade in Fall Creek, Wisconsin. What if you bring the person in and let the committee offer the job to that person, and then the committee is there and you give them all the Go Cricket swag, and then you record it and you say to that person, hey, I can delete this thing right now, or I can send this to your mom. You tell me what you want to do, right? Like, don't ever forget that everybody is somebody's kid. It doesn't matter if they're 4, 24, 44, 54. It does not matter. Everybody is somebody's kid, and everybody's kid deserves to be celebrated. And so when you do something like that, now you don't have to brag about your work because guess who's doing it?
Yeah.
Their mom and their dad, and they're out there all the time.
Yeah, and it's almost like that person gets hired and they come in and you got a whole welcoming committee
Oh,
just
yeah.
celebrating them. How do they be anything other than super pumped to
Yeah.
get ready to go?
Yeah, they're
Which is
cranked. It's
always what you're
awesome.
doing. Really, what you're saying is all the time, 24/7, you're always thinking about culture. You're always thinking about
Yeah.
climate. You're always thinking about making people feel good about themselves. And that starts at the top, I think, anywhere you go. What just we'll do like one more question. What that I have, what's your best or couple best pieces of advice for people that are just starting off as superintendents? Like what great advice have you gotten in your life that you've sort of looked back on multiple times in your career and thought, this is a great piece of advice that I got and
Mhm.
I've used it tons of times. I'll give you one for myself. One that I learned as a teacher was to stay personally connected to kids
Mhm.
without taking personally what they do and say. That
Oh, sure.
when I was young, knew, and kids would, F you, Mr. Mendler, stay connected, but don't take it personally. And like
Mhm.
that has been lived with me for my entire career and at all levels. When people who don't like me, just stay connected with them. Don't take it personally. It's probably something else in their life driving what their behavior is right now. Has there been anything for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think well, the first thing I think to myself is I spent $70,000 on a doctoral program. I remember one quote from the thing, and that's the thing is like so. The one quote was from Nancy Blair in my doctoral program, and she said, "The greatest gift of service that you can give to another human being is for the time that you're with them. They are the center of your universe." And if I always keep that as the as the compass, if you always keep that in your mind, you change the way that you walk into conversations. We tell people all the time you be intentional about the work that you do, open doors so people outside know what you're doing, and then build each other up because you can't do this work alone. And it always starts with being intentional and being present and engaged in the moment with the person who you're with, because they will tell that story. I don't love the fact that because the thing that we have to understand is every interaction matters, because every interaction could be the one that they talk about for the rest of their lives.
Yep.
I don't love the fact that I know that I walk into an interaction knowing that that might be the one that they talk about. But if I acknowledge it, if I acknowledge that it's real, if I acknowledge that when I walk into a conversation that that might be the one thing that they talk about for the rest of their lives, I treat that conversation differently. And that's
Yep.
important.
Right. And you'll do it that way every time. It's amazing. Hey man, you're the best. These hours go quick. I appreciate it very much. I've learned a ton from you. I really have. And I sing your praises everywhere I go. I think the world of you, man. I really do. I have a ton of respect for you and everything you're doing. And anytime that I could catch you anywhere, I would be happy to do that. To see you present, to see you speak. Your message is amazing. It truly is. And it's hard to keep my attention to the staff development day. I think you probably present with the same mindset that I do. My mindset always as a staff developer is I have to entertain the most disruptive one in the room. Like, who's the one who hates staff development the most? And that's always my thought when I get up there. And if I can hook that person, I'll easily hook everybody else. And I think without question, that's the mindset you take. So thank you for everything you do. If you don't mind, so you probably don't know about this either, but I have a paid subscription service called Mendler U. It's on my website, brianmendler.com. People can subscribe. It's $5 a month, and they have access to over 70 videos that I have and all sorts of little clips and really cool stuff. And I do bonus segments of every podcast that we put on Mendler U. So I got a ton of questions here. I got on Instagram and Twitter. Would you mind doing like a quick 5 to 6 minute segment on Mendler U, and we'll answer a couple of questions? Sound good?
Absolutely. You let me know when you want to do it. We got it taken care of.
We're gonna do it right now. So
All
we're
right.
gonna do it. So we're gonna end this. I'm gonna hit stop on this, and then we're gonna hit start again, basically, and then we're gonna post that somewhere else. Thank you, man. I appreciate the time. It was awesome catching up. I appreciate the time.
I appreciate you having me. Go Crickets.
Go Crickets, baby.
Oh yeah, always end the
This conference will now be recorded.
All right. So now that we're recording, do you mind talking more about that? What you just talked about, your son who struggled with talking. And the reason I'm asking is because I have a son who struggles with his speech as well. He's much better this year. He had a rough year last year. He stutters. And I got to tell you, I'm a professional talker. It's like being a pro. For me, it's like being a pro baseball player, but your kid can't pick up a bat. It's really hard for me. And it's been hard for me. I had no idea that you've dealt a little in some ways with the same thing.
same. It's the same thing. It's the same thing because I feel like, we're out there talking about the work all the time. And, there's the only place that makes me nervous in the world, the only place that makes me nervous is sitting down in front of 62 people to start the school year in our school districts. The only place in the world that makes me nervous, right? So me going out and talking to people is nothing. And I'll tell you, but when my son, who had some real nasal and hearing issues growing up, right when he was born, didn't get a chance to hear all the sounds and all the things that were happening when he was growing up, and so he really struggles to articulate what he wants to say. And so one of the things that our teachers did that really had a huge impact on him and us was, instead of, in sixth grade, instead of, reading a book and then doing like a diorama or a reflection or a book journal or whatever, they would podcast their reflection into I think they were using Audio Boom or Podbean at the time. And so what they would do is they would record their reflection there and make their own podcast, their show. And so the first show that we got from, so that the teacher would get the show, but then the teacher would send it to the parents and with a really cool note, hey, I listened to this. It was really cool. This is kind of some of the things that he said. So not only were we getting our son's voice, but we were also getting value from the teacher in that he listened to it, right? It wasn't that, here's the grade on the paper, you can have it. It's, I listened to this podcast and your kid rocks and here's why. And so at the beginning of the year, Kale would come up with these, he'd do this podcast, and it was like, hi, it's Kale, and welcome to the show. And I had read this book, and it was really fun, and I liked all the characters. And then at the end of the year in May, you turn on the podcast, it's like, hey, welcome to the Kale Show. Just got done reading Hatchet, and it rocked. And this is why, blah, 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 blah. So you could see not only the voice change, but the confidence change. And when the confidence changed, now you got a kid that's out there wanting to do this more. And that changed everything for us.
Of course. Wow, that's amazing. Well, there's so many amazing things about everything you just said, starting with the fact that 4 years ago you had a teacher using podcasts in your class in the classroom. Like, let's just start there, because podcasting was a new thing 4 years ago, and the fact that you had somebody already figured that out and on board is cool. The other thing that I love that's made me better in general with having a podcast is every week I'm forced to listen to myself. And the truth is, I hate listening to myself. I don't enjoy listening to myself. When I do interviews with other people, I rarely listen to them because it's uncomfortable for me. There's a lot of times where I say something and I'm like, oh, I can't believe I just said that. Or like, what was I thinking? Or, Brian, calm down a little bit, and I'm very critical of myself, but it's forced me to every week spend time listening really to the other people, but then I have to hear myself within it. And it's made me better. It's made me better in every aspect of my craft, because it forces me to reflect all the time. And I think that's probably what happened with him, right? It's like you start hearing yourself and you're like, shoot, I'm boring. Like this, like, I don't want to listen to me right now. And so it changes you. I know I've been working on the word like and the word because those are two fillers for me. And I hear myself say them when I listen to myself, and I'm like, there, I just did it. But I'm like, stop saying like, but it's a normal thing that happens. So it's what a cool thing, man. So was it a hearing issue or a speech issue more for him, or a little bit
more nasal, and just he had a lot of fluid built up in a lot of places. So it was more of a hearing thing than anything else. So
was that a thing when he was born, like, that you were worried about? Was there like a
No, he didn't really show any signs of it outside of, we have to ask him things twice, but everybody's got to ask me things twice too. So I really didn't think about it. But the thing that for him is once we changed his eating habits, and my wife's a nutritional therapy practitioner, and she's amazing. And she helps people from all over the place just kind of get their body right just through food. And so when we took, dairy out and gluten out and a couple other things that we just like, let's kind of stick to, all organic, this, that, and the other thing, it changed the conversation for sure.
Wow. So are you guys all gluten-free in your family then? Or are you guys like, what are you? Are you vegan, vegetarian?
No, they are. I'm not, because I'll eat pizza all day. But they're like, I haven't had any problems with it. Everybody in my family has had issues with it, with their body. So yeah, they're all gluten-free, dairy-free, all organic. We don't eat a lot of sugar, not a lot of processed sugar at all, to be honest. Ice cream from time to time. But other than that, like, people, they eat real healthy, and my wife's really into it, and she's wonderful. And like I said, she does things for people that blow my mind, and the fact that they can kind of come back from really, really troubling times and feel better about themselves, not just weight loss or anything like that. It's just feeling better, and that's changed it. But I've not got. I think one of the things that when you change your mentality, with that is you almost have to have like. You have to have an issue or something or some big event, because for me, I want to eat pizza. And so sometimes it's like, every time I'm at home, I eat great. But the minute I'm on the road, I'm like, well, there's a pizza place. I could probably do one of those real quick. So I think you got to get to the place where you own it. And she never pushes any of it on me, which is amazing. At the same time, it's always there. It's almost just like teaching. Like, you can't make them. You just got to provide the opportunity.
When I met my wife, I thought I was a decent eater. I did. I thought I was a decent eater. And then I left on a trip one time, and I came home, and she had moved in. She had moved in like a couple days before I had left on this trip. And then I left, I came home, and literally everything was, she had thrown out everything in the whole house, and there wasn't anything left like that. Everything I thought was actually healthy really wasn't. And it's been interesting though, because I have my brother and his family they have a lot of just autoimmune issues, and the diet has been the number one thing, and it's been gluten. I can't, though, you talk about Wisconsin, it's just synonymous with dairy. I mean, Wisconsin and dairy just go together, right? Like, It's the cheese capital of the
Different.
world, is it not?
Yeah, it is. So we eat cheese. I eat cheese all, and my family eats cheese all the
Yeah.
time. But they'll eat organic cheese. Like as long as it's organic dairy, they'll have some of it. But then, the only problem with this whole process is when, after like a week, like, I can make you I'll make you a promise, right? I'll make you a promise that after Thanksgiving, when we get back to the house on Sunday, it's, we should probably cleanse for a little bit, make sure we're okay. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. That's not what I want to hear. 2 week sugar cleanse? Come on. There's got to be something else we can do. Can't we meditate? Do something? Killing me.
Do you meditate?
No,
Not at
I don't.
all.
I can't. I'm like, you're talking about your listening and things that you need to do for listening. For me to sit down and think about my thoughts, they scare the heck out of me. I don't know if I want to do that.
I got to tell you though, so I had Erica Ebert on my show a few weeks ago. She's a mindfulness coach. There's one school district in all of New York State that employs a full-time mindfulness coach, and
Oh wow.
she's it. Yeah, one. And so she goes in classrooms and she teaches kids mindfulness and how to
Hmm.
meditate and how to think. And so when I started the interview with her, I said, listen, I said, I'm for this meditation stuff, but I have severe ADHD. I said, I have one request by the end of this. I want to know how when I'm trying to get home on a Friday night and I haven't seen my kids in 4 days, and then they tell me the flight's delayed and then they're going to cancel the flight, how do I not get pissed off? Because I get pissed off every single time. And I'm telling you right now, it's impossible for me to not get pissed off. And I'm telling you right now, she has helped me through this. And
Really?
she taught me what to do. So the key is, when things are good, like during times of good in your life, to just stop, close your eyes, and put yourself in the situation where things are bad. And I started doing that. So like occasionally I'd be bored or something. I would just be like, you know what? Let me close my eyes and pretend that it's a Friday, and and then see the flight attendant come on and see the look in her face when you see the maintenance guy come on and they're whispering to each other and you don't really know what they're talking about, but they're talking about something, and my heart starts racing because, oh my gosh, they're going to delay this thing and I have to get my connection, and am I going to miss it? And like all these things going on, at the same time. And I've started doing it. And I kid you not, man, when it's happened a couple times. Look, I'm still not great. I don't think I'll ever be great, but I'm better. I'm truly better.
Okay.
And I'm a believer, man. I'm a big believer in the whole mindfulness push that's happening in a lot of schools. I think it's really fascinating to teach kids. And they got the thing called the habits of mind. I don't know if you've heard of that, where
Yeah,
it's a whole book, and
absolutely.
my kid, my second grader, their school is doing it, and he comes home and he talks about the habits of mind, and it's just interesting to see from a second grader's perspective how they,
Hmm.
stop and think before you act, and like there's just all these, like, it's a very specific protocol that they take through that, and it's really cool. I'm into it. I'm into it,
All right.
but
I'll
it's
give it a
hard.
chance. I'll do something. I'll think of something. I'll think of something at this point. Because I
It's
get
hard.
that too. All of a sudden, like, one of the hard things for me is like, when I put myself in a position that I have to, right? Like, I don't like not, being, I don't want to say in control because that's not, but like at least, a place that I can't get out of. I have a hard time with that part of it, right? Like, that's a hard thing for me. So when I go to games, I stand, watching my son play basketball, I'll stand on the side because I can't sit in the stands. I just can't. Like, I can't be there knowing that if things don't go well and he throws the ball away 3 times in a row, that I can't like leave, like go out into the hallway and just relax a little bit. Or when he does something really great, that I can't like leave and cheer really loud. Like, I mean, those it's really hard for me. But
So
um,
it's a good segue, because I have a question on ADHD kids here, right? So
okay.
one of the questions is, I'm not going to read the whole question, but basically it's what do you do with kids who won't sit still and won't move or constantly need to move? And my answer to that is you let them move, right?
Let
You
'em
give
know.
them different places to go. I have no issue with that. I
Mhm.
think some teachers do have an issue. Have you seen some teachers who struggle with that?
Yeah, I have, but not as much here because I think that they do a great job of giving them an opportunity to just like, if you need to hang in the back, hang in the back. If you need to, if you need a bouncy chair, we'll get you a bouncy chair. If you need a fidget toy, whatever, it doesn't matter. All that stuff is nothing. The thing that we've talked to our group about is, what would you rather be doing? Would you rather be redirecting or answering the question one time? Well, it's not fair that they get a fidget toy and I don't. Everybody needs something different, man. That's the way it is. So, what do you want to spend your time doing? Like, always looking over your shoulder, wondering what the kid is doing, or just trusting that, hey, if you need to get up and move, just get up and move. It's okay.
Yeah.
I just need to know where you are. just let me know. And
And
so we've done great.
my answer to that was always it's fair. It's not equal.
Right,
It's
right.
not equal, but it's fair. And fair is everybody gets what they need. Equal means everyone gets the same thing. And what I
Yeah,
promise my students is I always promise them I'll always do my best to be fair to each and every one of you in this classroom, which means I guarantee you right now that I will not be treating you all exactly the
correct.
same way. I will not be, so that I can be fair. And then you
Hmm.
give them some examples of exactly what that means. It's one
Totally.
of my favorite things to teach teachers is
Hmm.
the difference between the concept of being fair and treating everyone the same way. A lot of people think it means being fair means everybody gets exactly the same thing, which to me couldn't be further from the truth.
100% agree. I think we're both in it. We're in that spot too. So
Yeah. All right, man. That's good. I
that's all
appreciate
you get.
everything.
All
Good.
right. That's good. I want to make sure I get a couple snaps for we are, or a couple
Yeah,
pictures
yeah,
for us. But
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
if there's anything else you need, just let me know. But I'll do. Yeah, it's funny that you said that about the about listening, because up until you said that, there's no chance I was listening to this interview. I'll push it out and I'll promote it and everything, but I'm not gonna listen to it. Like I do the same thing. I'm thinking, well, why did I say that? How did I say that
I
differently,
know.
or whatever? And that's those 1 minute walk to work. I'll do it over if I screw up the concept. If I if I was doing one day, I remember doing the recognize, acknowledge, extend one a couple times because I said recognize, extend, acknowledge. I'm like, well, now I gotta go do it again, right? Like those things. But if it's just like, let's just talk and move forward, then it's different because you just gotta. That's helped me. I think that I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to. It doesn't have to be too overproduced. It's just here it is. I put words on the bottom, put bumpers on the end, send it out, see what people think. And
Do you
sometimes they really
watch
like it.
yourself present ever though? Do you ever watch yourself present? Do you ever like make a point to record yourself if they're not recording you, or like at a keynote or at some kind of function
Right.
or even in front of your own staff? Probably be a
Yeah.
good one too.
Yeah, recently I have because I feel like I want to get better at it. And the way that I approach it is, I wouldn't go into a game without watching game film. It's the same concept. Like, it that's that that has helped a little bit with some pacing stuff. Um, but I try to sometimes I'll just do it, just put an iPad just off to the side, not because I want any content from it. I just want to see where I'm screwing it up, or where I could have made the point, or I should be looking at where the audience reacts the best. To be
Yes.
honest, I should be spending more time thinking about that, because there are some pieces that I'm thinking I'm just too stubborn with them. Like, I think this is a great thing, so I'm going to say it, even if it doesn't fly. I'm like, oh, well, that didn't fly. And then I keep thinking about, well, the next time it will. The next time that story is going to hit. That story's going to hit. It never hits. It's like, you know what? Get rid of the story. Like, no, but I really like the story. No, you
I
gotta get rid
know
of the
the
story.
feeling. I
So
know the feeling. I know, and I listen. And the worst is when you listen to yourself because you're like, I think that was good, and no one
yeah,
else did.
right.
I know.
Like, that's the best joke in the world. What the hell
I,
are you doing?
I
How do you
know.
not laugh at that?
And see now where I am now is I'm to the point now where like when I do a 1 hour keynote or hour and a half keynote, I just do my best stuff. Like
Yeah, me
I
too.
don't yeah, I just pick like I know this story, and this story are the ones that will get
Right.
them, and I just do those. And however I get to those, I just force myself into those,
Yep.
knowing that that's what's going to carry most of the day. You know.
Yep. Me too. And that's
What's the
been
one thing, I'm just curious, what's the one thing you feel like you need to work on as a presenter? Like what's one do you have like one aspect that you feel like in general you work on while you're up there, like you actually mine is cussing. Like I'm
hmm
really trying hard not to cuss anymore because
hmm
my wife really gets on. I don't like it anyway. I didn't think it was as big a deal till I started paying attention to
right.
myself, and then I would hear myself and I'd say, I don't want my kids to hear that.
Yeah.
I don't want my son to hear me talk like that, and it changed my perspective. Is there anything for you?
I think logistically, I think I'm way too dependent on slides. So, I mean, in 60 minutes, I'll do 240 slides in 60 minutes, and I just fly. But they
Nice.
all they all have part of the conversation moving forward. So I think that's part of it. But there's so many things. I think the um, just getting to the point a little quicker. I think some of the
Mhm.
stories that I tell, I I think they need to be a little bit more general because they're very Fall Creek centric. Right now, that's totally fine, and I think it will be for the foreseeable future. But I want to make sure that we're bringing other voices into it as well, and that's helpful.
Yeah. I think you're fast. That's the only
Yeah.
thing. Like I like it. It's my style, but I think like certain parts of the country, I know that hurts me. Like there's certain places I go where I just have to slow myself down because
Mhm.
you go to like Mississippi or Alabama or like some of these places, and again, it's no knock on them. It's just
You're right.
it's more me. It's just the culture is
Yeah.
different, and it's everything takes a little longer. It takes an hour and a half to watch 60 Minutes. I tell
Right.
like, hi Brian, and I'm like,
Yeah.
actually Brian. They're like, no, it's Brian. I'm
Yeah.
like, it's actually Brian. And it's I mean, it's great. Like it's great. They're so nice and friendly. But I always tell myself when I go there, like, slow yourself down.
Yeah.
And a lot of times though, for me, I feel like I'm leaving something out. But
Mhm.
what I have to realize is that I'm not leaving something out. Like I mean, I am sort of, but if they don't know
But they
it,
don't
then
know
they
it,
don't
right?
know it.
Yeah, I mean,
Correct.
I feel the same way, and that's why I go so fast. And there's times like I'll push the envelope just to make sure I get one or two stories in where they never would have known that it wasn't in there to begin with. But I feel better about the story. Like, how can I take that story out? Like that story about the personal day giveaway. I love that story because it highlighted. I didn't even get a chance to tell it. The it just highlights where our staff is at, and I think that they need to be celebrated. And so I celebrate teachers all the time, but that story celebrates a custodian, and that needs
Right.
to be out. So what story do I take out to make sure I get that one in? Well, you don't have to tell three teacher stories. Maybe you tell two, or
Right. Right.
that's I don't know. It's just
It's
been
hard. It's hard.
yeah,
It's always a
but I
work in
love it.
progress.
I love the work, though. I do. I love the work that you can I love the work that you can critique it and move it forward, and at the same time, it's like it's an art more than anything else. It's just how to get get the palette out there.
I think some people in general just enjoy the process of things, and
Hmm.
I'm the same way. Like I like the process. So for me, the process of figuring things out and of looking at things and of deciding, do I do this or do I do that? Or like you said before, paying attention to the audience. To me,
Hmm.
that's one thing that I've also really focused on over the last, I would say, year is really being in tune with them and trying to like eye contact all over the place, but really quick. Like so, yesterday I was in Michigan, and I had like there was a lot of people. It was a big room, and I made a point of like walking the room, and they
Hmm.
had like lights on a stage, and I told them, I said, bring up the house lights, shut down the front lights. I'm gonna walk, and I was roaming that room, and I was eye contact, and I've learned if you make eye contact with people quick, every person in the room thinks you're talking to them. And
Right, right,
once you,
right.
that's how you can make a room of 1,000 people feel like a room of 20 is by
That's a good point.
looking at people quickly. And all of a sudden they're like, whoa, he just looked me right in the eyes. Like
Hmm.
he's talking to me right
Yeah,
now. And
right.
it gets them focused, even though, but it's, you gotta, I think to do that, you have to be really confident with what you're talking about because you can't really be looking anywhere else. You have to just sort of know, here's where I'm going right now, and then do
Hmm.
it during those points.
Yeah,
I love
that
it
makes
though.
perfect
The whole
sense. I do
process.
like and I like the process of the story, but I also like the process of the slide design and everything that goes along with it too. Like,
I
how can
gotta
we
work
make
on
sure
that.
that we get the best? That's been fun for me too. So
Yeah,
it's
I
been
love
great,
how
man.
you do
It's
it. I
good.
love how you do it, and it's great
Thanks,
to
man.
watch. All right, man. Hey, I appreciate it. Thank you
All
so
right,
much for doing
have
this,
a good
man.
one.
It means the world
My
to me.
pleasure. My
You
pleasure.
got
It's
it, dude.
fun doing it. Take care.
Sounds
Have a
good.
great Thanksgiving. All
Stay in
right.
touch, man. You as
Yeah, take
well.
care.
You as well.
Goodbye.
See you.